before we go into the budget, I'm going to have Cynthia pass it out to you. I want you to know Tracy sits there right outside of the ARB panel rooms, and as soon as somebody comes out, she goes, "Hi, would you like to come over here and do a survey?" She is right there getting them to do those surveys. So she's like one of the top liaison officers in the state to get responses. So we really appreciate her doing that. Before we get into the budget, this is just a presentation of the budget. Wanted to let you know our 2017 MAP review, Methods and Procedures Review that the Comptrollers does. The El Paso Central Appraisal District passed at 100%. We exceeded, no recommendations were made. So that we had 11, 13, 15, and now 17, and every year's been 100% and with no recommendations. So we're very, very, very happy about that. And I need to brag on a couple of our employees. Rick Medina, James Thompson, and David Stone have taken all of the courses required, taken a case study, 8-hour exam, and a 4-hour final exam, and they are now the International Association of Assessing Officers Assessment Administration Specialists. So we, for the first time ever, we have IAAO designees in the appraisal district.
Awesome.
So very happy about that. On your budget, what I'd like for y'all to do, what we do, this is a draft proposed. It has already gone out to all of the taxing entities as a proposal, so your taxing entities that you represent will be reviewing it. What you'll need to know, we will be having a budget workshop for our April meeting. It is strictly a budget workshop. At that time, we can go over it item by item. We can discuss it in detail. Between now and then, if you have any questions, you let us know. We'll answer those questions. Anything specific you want to talk about, anything like that, you will have. In the budget, if you'll look under, there we have a table of contents, and then on page 2, you're going to have a narrative. And in that narrative, anything that was increased or decreased or not changed at all, you'll have a brief description of that. If you then go towards the end of that narrative, we have some very, Rosa Goldman and Rick Medina put together some very nice pie graphs that will kind of give you an idea of visual as to what sections our budgets are, what percentage of the budget all those sections are, all of our different departments. It'll also kind of gives you a comparative. On page 17 and 18, you're going to see comparatives and a breakdown of your salaries and your wages. Then on page 20, we start with the budget detail of the different departments. So you'll see all of those will be out there. If you go back to page 84, 85, that's going to be your recap and your department recap. And then the one that everybody's always interested in, if you go to page 91, that's your percent. When you see this budget, this $15 million budget, your entity does not pay the whole $15 million. It pays a portion. And the apportionments are on that page 91. It shows the percentage of that budget that your entity pays into. They pay quarterly. So that will be in there. You will also see your entire strategic plan will be in there. Organizational chart, that information is in there also. With the budgets, there is a section on there that we show an encumbered fund for legal. That is the $400,000. What the board is allowed to do at the end of before we get to the end of our fiscal year, at the end of September 1st, we can come before the board with an estimate of what amounts may be left over. We're very frugal. We start with a zero balance. We're a zero budget balance. So when we start with zero. We start all over again. We have no rainy day funds. We have no investments that we're allowed to have. So everything starts out as zero. So we have to anticipate at this point of the working of it, what's going to happen during the hearings. How many hearings days are we going to need? How many people are we going to need? What's going to take place? So we anticipate historically based on what's coming up. At the end of the year, if we don't spend those funds, they go back to the entities on the same percentage that they paid into our budget. So if you paid into our budget 22%, then 22% of what's left over goes back to your entities in the way of a credit on your next payment. So that's just kind of a little brief information, especially for those of you that are new. The way our calendar works, and we have a calendar in there, we give this to all of the entities right now and all of the board members as a draft for you to take, review it, go over it, ask us questions, write things down. And then in April, in the past couple of years, the board has liked to do a budget workshop. So we all get together and go over line item, all your issues that maybe we weren't able to address. And then in May, we post it for the public hearing will be posted in May. The public can come in and make comment. At that time, the board approves the budget because all taxing entities from the approval of the board has 30 days in which by resolution to veto a budget. A majority of the taxing entities would have to veto it for it to no longer be a viable budget. And that has to be done 30 days. So that takes us to about June 15th, June 16th. Then we have only 30 days for the board to create a new budget and approve it. Once it's approved, that's it, because we have to be done by July 15th. So that's where those dates are. It seems like we're starting rather early, but there's a lot of processes that we have to go through. And if you look on your comparison sheet, you will see that we've put in percentages to make it easier to see if it's increased or decreased, the percentage. So last year we had a budget increase of 4.73, and this year we're looking at 4.75. So it's under 5% to start off with. So here you go. You guys take it, review it. Ask any questions. You call myself, David Stone, Rosa Goldman. We'll be happy to address any issues. Any of your entities that have any questions, they know how to get a hold of us. David Stone, myself, and James Thompson will be visiting all of the entities the end of this month, the last week of March, first week of April, talking to them about what's going to be happening with the
How do you determine the percentage basis for each of the levy for each taxing entity?
It's based on the dollars, the levy that
the actual dollars that they were supposed to collect for the past year.
So basically based on the budget of each entity.
It's not the budget.
No, it's the dollars,
the
tax
levy.
dollars.
We gave every entity an appraised value for your entity, and your governing body set a rate, and that rate times that value is your levy. And we add up all the levies in the county, and whatever percentage your levy is of the total, that's your percentage of our budget.
That's all I have on that one. Madam Chairman, I did have a report, kind of a PowerPoint. If you feel you have time, we can do it. I can rush through it rather quickly. It's up to the board.
Gentlemen, would you like to see the PowerPoint?
Sorry?
Do you want to see? Were you talking when you should have been
Sorry,
listening now? Would y'all like to see the PowerPoint Ms. Kilgore has made?
Is it a repeat of this?
No, sir. No. This is a PowerPoint that when I go out to visit with the taxing different groups, with city council members or county commissioners groups, with senior citizen groups, with AARP, with any kind of groups. This is a presentation that I do before them. I'll go through a lot of it rather quickly, but there's a few points that I thought the board members might be interested regarding valuations, regarding percentage of residential versus commercial. I think sometimes people want to know, why our commercial values are so low. And so if you'd like, I can go through it within about 10 minutes.
Would y'all like to see it?
Yeah, sure.
10 minutes? Okay. We're on for 10.
All right. So this is what we do for neighborhood associations and pretty much everything else that we do. We tell them who we are, why we are. We were created back in 1980. In 1979, actually, with the Pivotal bill. Representative Pivotal set us up. We let them know about the state comptrollers. We give them a website. We talk to them about market value, and January 1 is our assessment date. We give everybody a definition of market value and go into that a little bit. Now, this is one of the things I wanted to let the board members know. As we did some research. Let me find my presentation here. This was a question Ms. Searles had. Homeowners are allowed to file for a homestead exemption They're also allowed to file for over 65 if they are over 65, or for disability if they are disabled. There is a new exemption, of course, our disabled veterans. We have different percentages, and there's also 100%. If they are totally 100% unemployable through the VA, then they pay zero taxes on anything. So we go over this in detail with the property owners, and then we also let them know of the new changes, first responder, surviving spouse. That's a new one. That's if a police officer, firefighter, first responder is killed in action, then the surviving spouse pays zero taxes. Now, one of the things that the board allowed us to do is, and it did pay for its way, Ms. Searles, you let us hire LexisNexis. We use their system. And so far, we're about halfway through. We still have about 9,000 that are pending responses. But out of that, an estimate of tax savings was almost $690,000. That's in tax revenue that we saved by doing this double check. For Canutillo, it was only $18,000. We were pretty good in Canutillo. El Paso ISD, $248. Isleta ISD, $322,000 in revenue. So this shows me that we were good at what we were doing, but we were able to catch some more using LexisNexis. So we still have a license with them, and we'll be finishing up. So I wanted to go over that with you. This is another thing that we let everybody know.
Can we tell the new board members that it was like a one-time deal that we all agreed upon, that we felt there were people who had over 65 tax exemptions that might be dead, might be moved away, might be a lot of things, and nobody had ever corrected their tax exemptions. And so we hired a firm, LexisNexis, to go back through and check all of these for us, and that's what she's reporting back, that was the income that was generated from the project that we approved last year.
And I think we paid $385.
450.
$450,000 was what was, but remember we had to take some money out of contingency for that, because we had only budgeted $180.
Yes.
And so we took some money out of contingency for that. Well, we generated $687,000 total by doing this, so it paid for itself.
Okay, good.
So
Thank
that
you.
was good.
That's just the school district money. We also
Yeah.
got money for the county and the city.
Right, yeah, this is just school districts. There was also the city and the county. Whenever the school district had a savings, so did the county and the school and the cities. So they generated the same savings. So, okay, so this is one thing we always let everybody know. And please, as new board members, let your folks know. Anytime anybody asks about an exemption, there are companies out there that will charge people to file an exemption for them. In doing so, not only do they charge them, they also get them to sign over almost like a power of attorney. So then they have the power of attorney to file for this exemption, and then they go in and file a protest, which property owner may not have wanted, and then charge them. So we always tell them, we do this. This is something we do. They don't need to be hiring somebody. Some of them will charge them a flat fee. Some will charge them a percentage. And so it can get quite expensive for a homeowner on these exemptions. And so we're always stressing it is something that we are required to do by law. They're entitled to have the exemption, and we want to work with them on that. Now, this is something I think we let a lot of people know, and I think it's very interesting for you guys. If you see the purple line down here, 214,339 parcels out of 415 are residential, single-family residences. 100,000 is undeveloped land. That's all that stuff, Waco tanks, way out off of the freeway. Commercial is only 24,000 parcels out of this 415. That's how many parcels we have in commercial. Now, in personal property, business personal property, that's your fixed assets. Those are the vehicles, the inventory, the equipment that we pick up in the businesses. There's 32,000. A lot of people ask me, why is that higher than this? Because when you're looking at a retail center, that's only one real estate account, but it's multiple personal property accounts. But you can see the burden just in looking at the parcel count of single-family residences here in El Paso County. Again, what is residential? I like to show them this. We go from this type of residential to this. I also like to show this. This type of residential. This one, we really had a kick out of this one years ago when we first got pictometry. Again, thank you, board members, very much for allowing us to have the ortho photography that we have. came in, we noticed by using that there was a building in the back. It was a whole nother house for somebody's mother-in-law. And the person came in and said, you have my square footage too high. And we were able to pull up that aerial and move it around and go, oh, but you have this house we never had before. He signed off on it, walked away. So these are some of the other parcels that we show people that we have to deal with, compounds that are fenced off. That's why we need our aerials. With our aerials, we can go in and actually measure the walls of the building. The state law says we have to measure the 2 prominent sides of every building every 3 years. And this helps us do that. Then we have this type of property. We also have agriculture. Now, one of the things this year I wanted the board to know, every year we reappraise, we look at commercial and business personal property. We look at market areas to see if there is a big increase in a market area of a property or a subdivision or a neighborhood. We look to see if increase, decrease, has something changed, has something created a economic factor. This year, everybody, over 415,000 parcels will be getting a notice. We are looking at our residential cost tables, and those cost tables are going up. The cost to build has gone up, materials have gone up, labor has gone up. So the average home value is going up. So we will be doing a complete review of all properties, not just commercial and personal property, but residential, totally new cost tables this year. So we're anticipating probably about 30 to 32,000 protests. We've been around 16 to 18,000. On some of our worst years, we were as high as 46,000. So that's why we need the funds. We have to meet Saturdays, Sundays if required. And this is just some of the information we will show property owners. We show them the different types of commercial properties that we have to deal with, measure, and value our lovely refinery. And then this is just basic. Now this year I thought was interesting. In 2016 we had 8,200 commercial permits. This year in 2017 we had 7,000. In 2018 we had a little bit about the same. In residential, 16 we had 25,000. In 17 we had 33, but we had more permits this year in residential than we have had for the last several years. You can see the number of new residences in 16 and in 17. Well, for 18, I don't have it in here yet, but for 18, we're right about 24,000. Or 2,400, I'm sorry, 2,400. So we are seeing an uptick in residential new construction. All right. Field work, just letting you know, we're out there measuring the houses, talking to businesses. I'm going through this rather fast if you need me to stop. Mr. Mott mentioned to you that Texas is a non-disclosure state. Appraisal districts do not get sales information. What we do is we try to send out sales questionnaires. We send out sales questionnaires to every buyer and every seller. We get about 1% back. People don't like to tell us what they paid for it. So what we also do is we walk around and see any houses that are for sale, and we look at listings. And then we talk to mortgage companies, finance companies, banks to see what the lending is going on, what is the percent down that they're asking for, what are the requirements, what are the rates that they're now getting. So that is all part of the work that we have to do to try to get information. This I think is really interesting. I think it's a good way to show people where we start. This is a Tierra del Este desert land. This was after it was developed. This is the interest. Desert land, totally undeveloped, no resources. 1,200,000, 72 million after it was developed. About 109 acres developed of that. So these are the things that our appraisers have to go out and check every single year to see what stage of development they're at, because we don't want any of the entities to miss out. We don't want to go from here to here and miss out on these years where it was increasing. So that's something we check every year. Personal property, fixed assets. Again, 2017, a lower number of personal property accounts than we had in 2016 at 24,000. It fluctuates based on a lot of restaurants, will last a year. When there was issues with Juarez, a lot of small companies were coming over here and doing business here. Things have loosened up, they go back, so it's very mobile. But it is a high dollar value, $5.6 billion in value. One of the things that's changing this year, we're letting everybody know, we've had it in the newspapers, is our rendition deadline is April 1st, and our protest deadline is May 15th. I've asked quite often by board members, why don't we have more information in the newspaper? We did put out a public service announcement, what do you call it? Press release to all of the newspapers and the TV stations, telling them about this. I even called one news station, said I'd be happy to be interviewed. We haven't seen it yet. So, but we are getting it out. This regarding renditions. Now this I think is interesting. This right here, 55% is of our tax roll, 55% is residential. 45% is everything else. It's agricultural, it's commercial, business, personal property, it's commercial real estate, commercial vacant. And this number has stayed pretty constant. Last year it was 56, the year before it was 54. It's right around 55% residential in El Paso County. That's your big base, guys. For those of you that have that are representing taxing entities, that's where your base is. Here's something else I think is really interesting. This is 2017 values. Your commercial improved 13.3, commercial vacant 2.4, business personal property 6.6, residential single family $27.4 billion in value. Add up all of these three, you're still below the value of residential. So we've got room to grow in commercial, that's for sure. Again, defending values, you can see we had 17,000 last year. The year before we had 16. About 28% do not show up for a hearing, and that's okay. We tell people, if you're not sure, go ahead and file a protest so you don't miss the deadline, but review everything that you have, and you find your values okay, you can either withdraw or you don't even have to show up. But don't miss out on that deadline. That's where we get most of our information. If you can see, out of that 17, residential had 3,900 scheduled preliminary. Commercial business property had 3,700. We were able to settle with an appraiser 7.6, well, let's say 7,700 accounts with an appraiser. Again, out of that 17, we had 4,700 that were no-shows or withdrawn. I'm sorry, 5,000 accounts, no-shows or withdrawn, and 27% that went to the ARB. Out of that 27% that went to the ARB, you just heard what 80-something% got a value change in the appraisal review board.
Not overall. That's of those responding to the survey.
Right. Those are yes. That's only those responding to the survey. Yeah. All right. Our business personal property deadlines. This was a press release that we sent out. Protest filed. You can see commercial as residential is pretty equal. And 59% of residential is settled with an appraiser. 18% is before the ARB on residential. And then 23% is withdrawn, and then 10%, well, 12% are no-shows. All right, kind of pass by this. In the community, a lot of people don't realize we're very involved in the community. We do, we go to schools, high schools, junior highs, do for career days. So we do that. We also, Red Nose Day, Opportunity Center sock drive. We collected over 1,000 plus pairs of socks for the Opportunity Center of the homeless. We also were, a lot of people don't realize we were part of the Hurricane Harvey relief. We used our facilities to store water and clothing and food grouped in with a veterans group. And this was our staging area. Also very much into the Susan B. Komen, and then staff. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what we do when we go out and visit with the public. Any questions? I tried to hurry. That's all I have, Madam Chairman.
Excuse me. Yeah. Everybody ready to go home? Yes, happy faces. With that, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much for coming, Ms. Kilgore. Thank you, Mr. Mott. Thank you. Time is 6:55, and it's still March the 15th. Thank you very much.
Did everything we could to keep.
Board
Yeah.
members, those of you that are new